Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is another Design Cuts Thursday live session, and I'm thrilled to welcome back the very talented and very long time friend of Design Cuts, Hazel Meredith. How are you, Hazel?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for having me back. Happy to be here today.
Always great to see you. And when I
Thank you.
say long time friend, you really, I think you've been here since year one. Is that right?
I
I
think
feel, I feel
so.
like we go way back.
Yeah, we do definitely. It's been a long time. We've had some great conversations, and um, yeah, lots of stuff been going on, and I enjoy working with you guys. So thank you.
Likewise. Well, we appreciate you being here with us today. And today we are digging into Photoshop. What are we going to be learning, Hazel?
We are going to take some of the new Art Deco collection, the one that's listed on the screen. It was just released recently, and I'm going to show you how to use some of that with your own photos and create some like scrapbook pages or something that you want to frame, and give you a couple of little Photoshop tips of how to work with some of these products as well.
Incredible. Well, without further ado, over to you. I can't wait to see this.
So today, like I said, I'm going to work with the Art Deco collection. I am working with two monitors, so you'll see things kind of appear because I like to drag things in from the other monitor. It just makes it a little quicker and a little simpler when we're working together. Of course, if you don't have two monitors, you'll just do like File Open and go to the product. So I'm starting with one of the patterns that are in this file, and I'm going to drag over my other screen for just a second so you can kind of see this. So within the collection, there are textures and elements and patterns and ready-to-use frames. So I'm starting with the patterns, and I'm starting with gold. They come in black, gold, and white in JPEGs and EPS formats, and if you use Illustrator, there's all kinds of formats, so it's very versatile. I'm starting with the gold ones, and I'm using number 12. So let me get this out of the way. Alrighty, so we're starting with this, and when I work in Photoshop, I love to work with everything on layers, so it makes it easy to change things later on and move things around and things like that. So I'm going to add a blank layer beneath this layer. So I've added a blank layer beneath the gold design, and I'm going to bring in, first I'm going to fill this layer with white. So I'm going to change my foreground color to white, and you can use either the little arrow or just do X on your keyboard. And I'm going to do an Alt backspace. I'm on a PC. If you're on a Mac, that would be Option Delete. And then I want to resize this because I'm going to add some other elements around this texture. So I'm going to go up to Image, Canvas Size, and these are all 12 by 12. I'm going to change my canvas size to 16 by 16. So that will add 2 inches all the way around, and say okay. And then I'm just going to refill that so it has the white all the way around. And now I want to bring in one of the borders. So let me go back over here. So I'm just on my other screen for a second. I'm going to go to the individual elements and borders. I'm going to gold, and I'm using number 5, and I'm going to drag that on over here. And I'm going to resize this to the 12-inch size. So I'm going to bring it down like that. And the key to, because these are transparent backgrounds, when you use your move tool to move something, make sure you click on pixels that have color, because if you click on a transparent area, it won't go anywhere. And that would not be a good thing. So I'm going to just tweak that a little bit, get our size where we want. And that's my first border, and I could bring that on top if we want to.
I'm such a nerd for these elements, Hazel. They're so cool looking, aren't they?
They are very cool. I do love these designs. So what I want to do is I want to replicate this border, and I'm going to use it on all 4 sides. So I'm just going to duplicate this rather than bringing it in again because I already have it sized to the size I want. I'm just going to I use some keyboard shortcuts. So again, it's Control J to duplicate the layer. It'd be Command J on a Mac. And using my move tool, I'm going to drag this one up to the top. And then I want to rotate it because I want it to all look the same. So I'm going to go into Edit, Transform, rotate 180 degrees. So now we have that one pointing up, that one pointing down. I'm going to duplicate this again, and I'm going to rotate it, edit, transform. I'm going to go 90 degrees clockwise, and then that one we're going to move to this side. And then we'll duplicate that one, edit, transform, rotate 180, and then we're going to drag that one. Whoops. That's what I mean about grabbing the right pixels, or else you grab something you didn't want to grab. So we're going to click on here. Make sure we're on the move tool. It gets a little tricky. I'm going to zoom in.
Yeah, we might have to turn off auto select layer, Hazel.
There we go.
I would suggest.
No, it's just because I was on the, let me scroll back now. Yeah, that's true. The auto select layer. Oh, yep, that does it too. So let's auto select. Good idea. I'm used to using that because it does make other things easier, but when you're doing things like this, that's a good point.
Yeah, fiddly details it doesn't like.
Easier. Yep. So let's go down and just remove, put our white back in place. There we go. So now I actually want some of the color behind here. I want to use one of the color borders on top of the blank layer because I want it to be behind all of the gold layers. So I'm going to come back into our patterns, backgrounds, and I'm going to bring in the ruby. I'm just dragging from my other screen, and that's already that 12 by 12 size, so I don't really have to even resize that. Well, I could, obviously, because I want it to be full size, but if you wanted it behind just part of that, you could as well. But I'm going to make it the same size as our whole page. There we go. So that's our base of where I'm going to add a couple of photos with some other neat little borders. So we're going to start with using the rectangular marquee tool, which is up here on the top left. And I'm going to draw a shape where I want my photo to go. So I'm just going to kind of use the design as a guide, and I'm going to draw about like that. Now what I want to do with this shape, and I actually want to add a blank layer because I want this shape on a separate layer. I'm going to create a clipping mask. If you've never used these, it's a great way to make something take on a shape and by grouping the two layers together. So I'm going to switch my foreground color to black. And I'm going to fill this layer the way we did with the white in the background. I'm going to do my Alt backspace, and I'm going to fill this with black. And Control D will deselect it. And now I'm going to bring in a photo on top of this. And I've been shooting lots of barns down here in Tennessee, so I'm bringing in one of my barn images. And now I want to size my photo a little bit bigger than this shape because it's not quite the same size. So I want it to be the same width, and it's going to crop some of the top, which is okay. And the way we clip these together is the keyboard shortcut Control Alt G, G like in grouping. So you'll see it cropped the top because the photo is now the shape of that square. Pretty cool. And
yeah, it's a really cool photo as well.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive structure.
Yeah, thank you. This is in one of the old barns, one of the properties. We've met a lot of property owners because I've been doing workshops here, and they've let us come onto the property and roam around, and people have been very gracious and welcoming since we've been in Tennessee. So I'm going to add another photo down here, and I want it to be the same size box. So instead of redrawing it, I'm going to select that layer and do my Control J, and it's going to duplicate that box for me. And then I'm just going to bring that one up to the top layer and then use my move tool and move that one down here. So I'm going to put it about the same position. That looks good. And then I'm going to bring in another photo. And then we'll put this one over top of this box and we'll size it and Control Alt G. So there we have two photos on our page. Now there are other ways you can use different shapes if you want something other than a square. I'm going to turn off a couple layers for a second. And I'm going to select this layer. If you go up under, if you right click here and use the custom shape tool, there's a bunch of shapes built into Photoshop like that. There's tons of things in here that you can use as shapes to clip your photos to, or there's lots of different things you could do with them. I'm going to use this little shape here. I'm going to double click it and I'm going to draw over top of this black square, just so we have that as a guideline. And I can close that. And now that I have the handles, I could stretch this out to the size I really want. And enter. Whoops, where'd it go? Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Huh. It's always important to pay attention to where your layers are. And it's easy to forget, when you start doing lots of different layers. So
especially with clipping masks, it can mess up pretty easily with the layer order.
For sure. So this came in as a smart object. I'm just going to right click it and rasterize it for now because I don't really need it to be a smart object. And I'm going to use my selection tool, my magic wand. I'm just going to click in the middle and then I'm going to do my Alt backspace and we're going to fill that with black. So now that is our shape instead of a square. So let's take that first picture and I'm going to bring it back up here, turn it back on, and get on the move tool and we'll, come on, move tool, Control T, give me my handles. I love when Photoshop has a mind of its own.
Which is most of the time.
All right, let's hit the check mark here. There we go. It's not giving me the handles for some odd reason.
Yeah, that's
very weird. I've
really
never
weird.
seen it
Yeah, you've got your bounding box transform controls on.
Interesting.
Can you drag it back in as a photo?
Yeah, maybe let's turn that layer
as
off
a new layer
because it's being a little touchy today. There we go. Gotta love Photoshop. All right, so we're going to put it kind of close to the bottom because I want it to crop at the top. And then we'll do our Control Alt. Let's get this layer out of here so it doesn't interfere. And we'll do our Control Alt G. So now our photo is that shape, right? So we can also duplicate this shape and we'll bring it down in here and unclip those for a second. Move this one. Let's hide these. Start getting so many layers that it's easy sometimes to hide them. There we go. I'll move that one down and it moved both. There we go. Turned off both of them. All right. Phew. So we're going to bring that one in, turn this photo on. Now it gave me the bounding box, so maybe not. Yeah, for some reason it's not liking having the same photo. Oh, there it goes. Interesting. And Control Alt G. And then we can turn that one back on. So now we have, there we go, 2 photos. So because they're not quite centered, I'm going to select all 4 of these layers, and then I can just get this centered in my page. And then the other thing you can do to accent these shapes, if you double click the shape layer, it will give us our layer styles, and we could do a stroke around it. And I selected the color from this gold. It actually is remembering it from when I was doing this earlier. And then I'm also going to do an outer glow. And it added the glow. And you just would play around with the sliders to get the sizes that you want. And once you have that, we want to duplicate it on the other. Again, we don't want to have to recreate it. If you right click that layer and copy the layer style, we can go to the other shape, right click and paste the layer style. So you don't have to replicate your efforts. And there we go. So now that this page is done, but say we think we like the red. I chose the red because I knew there was red in the barns, but maybe you want a different color. So let's go back to our backgrounds, patterns, backgrounds, and let's try the green. And we're going to drag that. And then we're just going to have to bring the layer down to the bottom. So it's under our gold. I could have clicked on the red one first and it would have been easier. There we go. So you could very easily change the color, and there's 5 different colors of backgrounds. You have cream, emerald, midnight, onyx, and ruby. So
Yeah, I
it's a
love the
cool way you
color
can,
palettes with this pack.
yeah, and looks like I unconnected something here. Let's do Control-G. Perfect. So that's our first project. So it's a nice way to, if you're doing scrapbooking, or you could even frame something like this. You could have it printed, just to jazz up, other than having a plain file, a plain print. You could totally do something different with it. So the next one, I'm going to do my last one first. I have 3 projects done, but in case we can't get to them all, I'm going to do one that uses one of the, there's some ready to use frames in here. And I'm going to use one that has a peacock on it.
Amazing. By the way, we're 20 minutes in, Hazel, so I think
Yes.
we're pretty good on time, hopefully.
Okay.
And love that first composition. I can see a comment here from Anne, who says, already I have learned 3 new things, and I've been using Photoshop for years and years. So
Awesome.
that's great to hear, Anne.
That's what we like to hear, for sure. And I'm going to bring in the emerald paper. Actually, I should have brought in the paper first, but that's okay. Let's switch that. I think, let me trash that. We'll bring in the paper. Let me start again. I should have brought the paper first because it's sized properly. So let's do it that way. It'll be simpler. So I'm going to open up the emerald, and then we're going to go to the ready to use frames. Frames, gold. And you can use any color. I happen to like the gold. There we go. And because I didn't drag it in, this is a good way for you to see how to add something to another image if you're working with just one monitor. So I have my paper open here and my frame open here. So if I use my move tool and I just separate these 2 images, then I can click on here and drag it over top. Thing is, if I dragged it improperly from the other screen, it would already be sized, but that's okay. We're going to make it work.
I feel like I'm still getting used to Photoshop automatically constraining the proportions.
Yes,
Instead of having to hold shift.
Yes, I actually switched it back to like the original. You can change that in your settings. If you're used to it the old way, you can reset that. Okay.
Good to know.
So what I want to do here is I'm going to put a photo just on the inside of this area. So I'm going to duplicate this frame, and I'm going to create a clipping mask just in here, the way we did with the black shape. But instead of drawing a shape, I'm going to use my magic wand. And because I'm on the bottom layer, we can actually hide that one. I'm going to use the shape to create my own clipping mask. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to hold down the shift key because I want to add to this shape. And I'm going to select all of these little areas in here and make sure we get in between everything. And I'm going to move this up. So I want everything selected except the gold within this shape here. And then I'm going to again, using the shortcut key, my Alt backspace, I'm going to fill that selection with black. Control D deselects it. And now I'm going to bring in, I'll turn this one back on. I'm going to bring in a photo, which happens to be a peacock.
How appropriate. I love it.
It's also my my studio mascot and name is the Peacock. So Peacock Studio. So I'm resizing this. I'm ignoring where the excess is. I'm just centering him where I want it in the middle. And then we're going to do that Control Alt G. And there we go. It's now sized to that shape. And I duplicated the border so we have the full border on top. And if we wanted to get rid of these lines in the middle, I could just take my erase tool, and on this top layer, I could just get rid of the gold. And you could get rid of these if you wanted as well down here. Let's take out. I'm going to show you another little Photoshop trick. If you want to draw a straight line, if you click at the beginning of your line, hold down the Shift key and click where you want the end of the line to be, it draws a straight line.
I remember the day I discovered that. Such a game
It's like
changer.
so cool. I know. Every time I show somebody that, they're like, what? Yeah. It's like, there you go. So now we have a nice frame, and you could trim the sides. I could make this, fit to like, say an 11 by 14 frame or a 10 by 12 frame, whatever you wanted to do. But it's a really cool way to accent a photo. And there's a whole bunch of different borders with the, let me go back to her file here and I'll show you some of them. The ready to use frames. Let me drag the screen over. I'll open them in black so you can see them. And you can see there's some really cool frames here, as well as, creating your own. She's already made a whole bunch of frames for you.
Yeah, I love these. And then, as you've just shown, you can either make your own from elements, use the pre-made ones, or a halfway house is just customize the pre-made ones.
Yeah, like, here's some other birds. There's some really cool stuff in here, some nice shapes. And these could be all kinds of, frames and accents and things on different pages. Alrighty, so that's that one. So let's go on to one other.
Nancy said, could you just repeat the straight line trick, please?
Oh,
if
sure.
That's okay.
It's really easy. Let me cancel that for this. So if I wanted to draw a straight line and I'm on my either eraser, this works with a brush tool if you're trying to paint a straight line, or you can use it even with the healing brush. You would click at the beginning of where you wanted to erase something and then hold down the Shift key and click at the end of the line, and it will, I still have this one showing, so that's why you can't see it. So it erased it, so let me do it again. I had both layers showing. So if we wanted to click here and then move your cursor to the end of your line, hold the Shift key and click again, it will connect those 2 points and draw a straight line.
So cool.
Yeah, it's a very handy little trick for sure. I use it all the time. All right, so for our third one, I'm going to go back to patterns, backgrounds.
That second one was so effective as well, and pretty rapid. So we're definitely good on time. I'm sure we can do some Q&A at the end, but if you do have any questions about, general Photoshop techniques or working with this kind of Art Deco composition, click the Ask a Question box just below this live stream, pop your question in, and we will get to it at the end.
Awesome. So I'm going to go back into those ready-to-use frames, and I'm going to use, let's do white this time. I'm going to use number 11. I'm going to drag that over. And then we're going to change this up a little bit. So we're going to leave the size for a second, and I'm going to rotate this. So edit, transform, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to go back to my move tool, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And what I did was, I know I wanted to be, sort of close to the edges, okay, and I wanted to be about half of the size, so these papers are 12-inch. So I'm looking at my guide, and I'm going to make it go to the 6-inch mark because we're going to have a few of these. So again, I'm going to move this up. Let's start up in the upper left. And then I'm going to Control J and duplicate it. And we're going to move that one over here. And I love you get these little guides that let you line things up easily, which is wonderful. And then we're going to duplicate it again and move this one over here. And I'm going to have to tweak the middle one a little bit, but that's okay. Go back here. I'm going to move this one up. That works pretty well. I'm going to bring it in a little. There we go. So now we're centered. So now I have 3 shapes that I'm going to use for some images. So above the first one, I'm going to bring in my first picture. And I'm going to try to use the frame as my crop shape rather than creating a crop shape. We're going to see how this works. So I'm going to bring this in, and I want some of the frame to be over my picture, the inside line. So I'm going to zoom in a little so you guys can see. So I want this to line up here. And I'm going to show you a quick way too. When it doesn't quite want to jump to the places, you can use your arrow keys to move it a pixel at a time. You can see how it's lining up to the top and the left side by just using that key. And then because this is a sunset and not a person, I'm going to stretch this just a teeny bit to fill that square to save me from doing a clipping mask again. And then we're going to say okay. And then I'm going to bring that below my frame. So now we have, you can see the frame is over top, and I didn't go quite wide enough over here. So let's bring that all the way out. There we go. So that would be our first image. And so let's zoom up here. So I'm going to bring in my second one over here. Scroll back so I can grab the edge here. And zoom in so I can actually see it. And almost there. That looks pretty good. That's our second one. And for the third one, oops, I think I just moved my picture by accident. Control Z, get that back in place. And bring in our third one. And let's get this one sized. And there we go. And then bring that one right under that frame. So I have the frame and then the photo, the frame and the photo, and the frame and the photo. And we'll size that. So if the frame's too, I've noticed, like some of them with the white, you might want it to be a little bit bolder. If you just click that frame and duplicate it with a Control J, it'll make it a little bit bolder. So you have 2 layers of that same color. It makes them stand out just a little bit more. And now I'm going to bring in a couple of corners and dress up the rest of this page a little bit. I'm going to bring up a little edge here. So let's go to Individual Elements, Corners, and the white. Look at my notes to see which one I used. Number 5. Of course, that's much too big, so we're going to size this down to like that. And we're going to put it in position. And then I want it to rotate it. So Edit, Transform, 90 degrees clockwise. And that's the first corner. And then we're going to do the same thing we did with the others and duplicate it. And then I'm going to bring it down to this corner. And we'll get it lined up. And then we'll rotate it. And there we have it. So that's all of those. Then I decided to, if this were going to be a scrapbook page or even a frameable piece of art, I'm going to add a little bit of type. And it's remembering what I did earlier. We're going to make our type color white, which is FFFFFF. You can also always type in the numbers, or you can just choose your color out of the color picker. And I'm going to center this and say, add some type there. And then I went back into the individual elements over here, and I'm going to add, there's a category of animals. Let me show you these real quick because there's some really cool stuff. So you can see there's different elements. We have the peacocks and some other things. I'm going to use this seahorse since we're dealing with kind of a beachy theme, and I'm going to grab the white one of it. And I'll bring this over. Oh, come on, drag over. Right now it doesn't want to drag.
It's the second screen.
Yeah.
Photoshop doesn't always enjoy.
Usually I don't have a problem. Do I have something else selected? Oh, that's why, because my type layer was still highlighted. That would be why. There we go. See, this program's smarter than me. So we're going to bring this in.
And to clarify, that seahorse is from the pack itself, isn't it?
Yes,
it's one of the illustrations.
There's some individual elements, and animals are one of them. And then I'm going to duplicate that. And go tool, drag it down here. And then I'm going to flip that one around. And flip that horizontal. And there we have it. So there's a really nice page that you could, again, use for a scrapbook. You could frame it. You can, and I see things aren't quite lined up. You could tweak that easily, once you have everything in place, and play around with it. Another thing I like to do when I have type, if you double click again on your layer, you can add layer styles. I like to do bevel and embossing. It gives a little bit of depth to the type, and you can just play around with the sizes. Let me zoom in so you can see it a little better. And I'll reopen it. So you can see how it gives some shadows and contours to the text. Gives it a little bit of a 3D. On white, it doesn't show up quite as much as in other colors. And then also doing a drop shadow, which normally I would do black, but being that we're on a dark background, you could also change that to white. And then control the opacity. I like to use 135 for my angle. And then controlling the spread, the size. You can just, make something a little soft, but it just gives some depth and dimension to your type. So that's something cool to do. And you could even do that to the shapes if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's a really cool effect, actually. Yeah, so if we wanted to apply to the seahorse, how would that work? Would you just copy the layer style?
I would say I could actually copy that layer style, right click it, copy layer style, go to one of the seahorses, right click, paste the layer style. And then we can go to the other one and paste as well. So just like that.
Hazel, if we wanted to, I can see some people who are talking about textures that come with this pack, like the golden textures. If we wanted to use them and perhaps clip them to the seahorse shape or the frames, would we be able to do that after applying these layer styles? Would that work?
Yes, you could still do that even if it has the layer style. Absolutely.
But would it be
Let's
possible
try one.
if we demonstrated? Thank you.
Yeah, let's go to this one and let me find another background. So let's go into patterns. Let's try the gold. So if we wanted to add, actually, let's go to the solid color. That might be a cool. There's so many different subfolders. So we'll go to patterns, then backgrounds. Let's try the cream background. So I'm going to bring that in under this layer. So I'm going to click the layer below it, because anytime you add a layer, it adds above the highlighted layer. So that'll just save me dragging it. So I'm going to bring that in here. So it looks like, oops, didn't drag. It opened separately. Let's get rid of that. Let's try that again. There we go. So now it's under this shape. So if I click on this shape, and let's see, how are we going to do that? I had to think about that a second. Control Alt G. No, let's got to do it the other way around. Let's put that on top. Control Alt G. I may have to create a clipping mask first of the shape. I think that's what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So let's undo that. We'll just hide that layer for a second. Sometimes you have to, if you haven't done it, you kind of think about it a little and analyze your steps. So let's click the, let's make a separate layer. And we're going to make our selection. So we're going to do like we did with the peacock frame and just select all of these areas. It's probably a simpler, faster way, but this is what came to mind quickly. And there we go. I think we're good.
I think just to confirm, I think we also have the line selected here, so we've selected the whole seahorse. Just checking that was
which is really what I want to do. So I think I'm going to select that line too, and then that line. Let's see if we can. And we can always add to the selection too once we get this made. So now I'm going to click that layer, make my foreground color black, and do my Alt backspace. There we go. So now we could come back and select. I missed a couple. Shift. Oops, there we go. And go back to this layer. Alt backspace. Control D. Okay, I still missed a couple, but you kind of.
Okay, could I suggest something?
Sure, absolutely.
I would click outside of the seahorse with
the
quick selection on Magic Wand and then invert.
Invert. That's a good idea. Thank you. So let's get rid of that layer and we'll do it the other way. That would probably make a whole lot more sense. There we go.
That's right. It's what I'm here for.
So let's click on layer with the seahorse. There we go. And then select inverse. Much easier. Clicked here. Alt backspace. Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Now we turn this layer on. Control Alt G. And then we'll drag our seahorse back above it. And there you go. It's on top of it now. So in this case, I would probably switch from the gold one to maybe the black one so that we see the color, or we could change that from the cream. Let's try the green. And we'll take this one out.
That looks pretty cool.
And we'll do.
That looks like
Control Alt G.
It looks like a pin that you would buy.
Yeah, it does actually. There we go. So now we've got the green inside of the seahorse.
That's so cool.
So you could change the colors that way. Yeah, so there's lots of ways you can combine all of this stuff, and you could say I didn't even move that into position, but it covered that area that we needed. And of course you could select that one and then, have it be the same for both. But yeah, you could do lots of different things with these shapes. There's so many cool pieces to this kit that you can create all kinds of neat things.
Well, what I love is I think you've shown how versatile it is today, because your compositions here are not inherently Art Deco, but you've used an Art Deco pack to really fit with your incredible scrapbooking style. And so it just shows, aesthetically it works in so many mediums.
Yeah. And the shapes and patterns are, even like you said, they're Art Deco, but you could use them in lots of different ways. It doesn't have to specifically be to that style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of how you think about compositions, what is your process like? Because you'd obviously planned out these compositions before this live session, which was great.
Yes.
But when you're coming up with a composition from scratch, is it organic? Do you just play around till it looks right, or do you kind of sketch it or have a clear idea before you start?
I usually just start playing. In this case, because I was working with this particular Art Deco kit, I just kind of looked through the pieces that were in the kit and got, decided on ones that I liked. Like the first one, I really loved the shapes of those arches that were in that background pattern. This one, I wanted to frame some photos, but I didn't want it to be too elaborate because I wanted you to still be able to see the photos. So that was why I chose this particular frame. And then once I got those into place, at first I thought about doing 2. I'm like, let's see how it looks with 3. So I do play around to kind of come up with the different things. And then I thought to fill in the space, some type here would be nice. And then the borders, so I thought kind of balanced it. And then to fill in these spaces, I looked at the shapes. And since I was dealing with beach scenes, I thought the seahorses would be appropriate.
I do actually love that seahorse.
It's so I do fun. Too. It's very cute. I could see where I'd use that in a few different things. For sure.
First of all, a massive thank you for this session, and everyone, let's please give it up for Hazel in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge. Where is the best place for people to find you? I can see the lovely Gem has linked up all of your socials, Instagram, YouTube, etc., as well as your website, I believe.
MeredithImages.com is the website, and then from there you can link to all of my social media. I do a blog 3 times a week, and I share different things, and like when you guys come out with new products, I always share those as well. All of my classes and tutoring and webinars and things like that, I always share in there.
Amazing. Well, everyone, please go follow, check out and support Hazel. She's such a wonderful member of this creative community. And as I said at the start, we go way, way back. So it would mean the world if you went and supported her. But Hazel, thank you again for joining me today. It was great.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate you guys having me on again. And I look forward to working with you again in the future.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to welcome you back. Have a great rest of your day, Hazel.
Alrighty. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.